Welcome, first of all, to everyone who is coming out to hear what Justin and I have to share today. We've got a really exciting story, but the topic of today's conversation is the backstory for ALU. And for those of you who may not be familiar, maybe you missed all of my emails leading up to this, but ALU is African Leadership University. And in addition to having an undergraduate program, they also have the African Leadership University School of Business. And believe it or not, this university had selected Infusionsoft as their CRM and marketing automation tool of choice about a year ago. And some pretty impressive things have happened over the last 12 months, and Infusionsoft has played a pretty reasonable role, or a substantial role, in that growth. And so we want to talk about exactly what has led to that. We want to pull back the curtain on some of the things we've been doing, and hopefully package some of those lessons that we've learned up into takeaways that can help you grow your business. So, Justin, can people hear us?
Yes, we are good to go. Thanks for letting us know, guys.
Okay, so let me introduce Justin here, who's with me. Justin is a close friend of mine, and in addition to looking a little bit like Adam Levine, he is best known for his work in the customer experience arena, and more recently as the VP of Marketing for ALU. So Justin has been kind of the architect behind assembling these systems that ALU has used to, I don't know, catapult some of that growth they've experienced. Justin, welcome, and thanks for taking time to join me today. You and I both know, this story and how excited we both are to share it, but I'm just really happy that you're here and that we've made the time and space to take some of these lessons and disperse them into the Infusionsoft ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And hello, everyone. I'm just hoping that what we have to share is really valuable to you. I think so. I've been on this journey here with ALU for a little over a year now, and it's been an incredible ride. And I feel like every single day is a new case study in small business success and digital marketing and Infusionsoft and automation. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Every day I think could be a case study. And so at ICON, which I'd love to see or hear via the engagement window here, how many of y'all are planning on attending ICON? There's a really small segment for all the ICON finalists to talk a little bit about this story and talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done from a marketing and automation standpoint. But it really is very high level and just barely scratches the surface. So we wanted to dive a little deeper today and hopefully provide you things that are valuable to you in your business or with your clients or whatever that may be. So those are the outcomes that we really hope you get. And Greg, I'd love to have you verbally articulate, what's your idea? What do we want to make sure are the main things that people take away?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to piggyback with another one, which is to all of you listening. I'd love to know right off the bat, early on, if you only took away one thing from this, what question is that, or what piece of information would that be? And then hopefully you'll have plenty of questions and stuff as we go, and we'll hit all those things. But Greg, I'd love to get clear so we can make sure we hit the bullseye.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over the agenda as I see it here. We've got some topics that we want to discuss and make sure that that we hit on today. So we're gonna start off with the context and the backstory. So ALU is a really impressive institution for a number of reasons, but part of that is the story as to why ALU exists and the problem that it exists to serve, or to solve rather. So we're going to go over that story just briefly, and then we're going to talk about the ALU timeline. So where they were, when it started, where they were a year ago, which is when Justin and I both got involved, and where we are today, and kind of the benchmarks or milestones that we've hit along the way. And then we're going to discuss the what we've been calling internally the ALU Playbook. So the playbook is how we've done what we've done, right? It's not magic and it's not random, but it is a very specific set of standard operating procedures and best practices and even nomenclature that we've formalized using this playbook. And obviously some things that we didn't get right have led us to making adaptations to the playbook. So we're going to share that with you just exactly the way we've shared it with our marketing team internally. And then we're going to kind of do a summary session where we each share some of the high lessons that we've learned and why those were important, or why we may have perceived them differently after something took place or something happened. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the Small Business Icon contest. So that is, as Justin alluded, kind of a small part of the Infusionsoft conference next week. and we're totally thrilled that ALU was recognized as a finalist. But I want to just share what that experience has looked like, why we chose to apply, and if you're considering it for your business, Justin and I will happily give whatever advice we can in terms of what our journey has been like. And then if we've got a little bit of time at the end, we'd love to use that for Q&A. So if there's anything specific that you want covered that you haven't heard, we're going to make sure that we stick around to get those answered for you, and that this is as valuable as possible for your business. You may have seen it in the emails, but one thing I don't plan to do is pitch, right? There's no slide where I line up a whole bunch of products and bonuses and then cross them all off and say, today only, you get it for this. There's nothing like that. This webinar is the value. This is the takeaway. I want this to stand alone, and I want you to leave this saying, yeah, that was well worth my time. And if I do that successfully, and you want more of the stuff we've talked about, yeah, I do have virtual courses, and I've got a membership program, and I'd love it if you check those out, but that's not the focus today. So, Justin, having said all that, can you give us a little bit of the context behind ALU and the mission that it set out to serve and the problems that it solves?
Yeah, first though, I'd like to contradict you on the pitch. If anyone wants a $30,000 African MBA, you can talk to me after that. Or if you've got, adolescent children who are going to go into college, we've got an undergrad for them as well. So, yeah, I'll have a landing page and a code for you later. What was the question? Some context? How we got going?
And I'll cue it up for you. There is a problem that exists in Africa, and I'm sure it exists other places as well. But it's known as brain drain, where a lot of the best and brightest or most qualified students in Africa end up leaving to go to European universities or Western universities, and they get a degree from oftentimes prestigious universities. But then once they've done that, they don't go back to Africa. They don't go back to their communities. And so as a result, a lot of the best and brightest, the most talented people are leaving the continent, and a lot of the problems in the continent that exist on the continent persist because they're not keeping their best resources there in terms of solving it. So the founder of ALU is this guy, Fred Swaniker, and Fred paints a really important vision, and I'll let Justin kind of take the baton from there.
Yeah, so if you're interested in ALU, first off, it's unbelievable what this organization is about. Every day I'm kind of in awe at what we're a part of. It's truly world class, and amazing visionary leadership by Fred and all of our executives and our board and so forth. It's really exciting. If you want to know more about it, Fred has a TED Talk where he announced this in the launch of this network of universities across Africa. It is called the Leaders Who Ruined Africa and the Generation to Fix It, and it's a really awesome TED Talk, and so you can get the story.
Yeah, I just shared the link if anyone wants to check that out. Please wait until after the webinar to watch the video, but it's totally worthwhile. It's 13 minutes. For sure.
So that'll fill in any of the gaps if you're curious on really what is this about. But there's going to be in the next 30 years there's going to be well over 1 billion working age people in Africa alone. It has the largest growing population of working age people on the planet, and it's an economic powerhouse or an economic ticking time bomb, depending on how Africa chooses to harness its most valuable resources, which is not what's in the ground or growing on the land. It's the people there, and it's so ALU is set out to basically harness that. Find the best and brightest, and specifically the leaders, the future leaders of Africa, and develop them and create really 3 million ethical and entrepreneurial leaders by 2060. And to do so through 25 campuses with 10,000 students on each campus across Africa that we'll have built in the next couple decades. And we launched Campus 1 a year and a half ago. We're already on Campus 2. There's people on the ground for our English immersion, and our first full class comes in about 2 weeks from now. And then our second cohort will come right after that. It's growing rapidly, and it's really exciting, and excited to share some of how we've filled the funnel to generate that and be able to speak to a market and an audience that speaks many different languages across very, very many different countries. Africa is not a country; it's a continent. There's 54 very different, very distinct, very separate countries. Yet there is a continental identity, which is pretty amazing. And so being able to figure out how do we talk to them, how do we reach them when you've got people on iPhone, iPhones and smartphones, and people who don't have running water, and we're trying to find the best and brightest, regardless and irrespective of their circumstances.
Yeah, so that's perfect, and that's kind of in a nutshell the problem that ALU exists to solve. Fred paints a very crystal clear picture of what that looks like, and it is ambitious, right? Justin described 25 different campuses producing, how many thousands of liters each year?
250,000 at any time, 3 million by 2060.
Yeah, which is kind of overwhelming when you look at it as just that. But he's worked back to create the formula of what it takes in order to make that vision happen, and he's done a good job of enrolling really talented people to subscribe them towards that mission. So with that said, I'd like to go just briefly over the ALU timeline, J-Mac. So where it was, when we got involved, and what has happened in the past 12 months.
Sure. So in our fall on the northern hemisphere of 2015, the first class came into Mauritius, which is an island nation, an African nation in the Indian Ocean. It's paradise. It's an amazing place, but it's the safest place in Africa, and it's the most economically viable place in Africa, and so it's a great place to build a home base for a network of universities. And so the first class came in with only, I think, 80 or 90 students to start to pilot that and so forth, Greg and I got involved around February last year, right around ICON of last year. I remember I was having talks with Fred and figuring out they wanted to launch an MBA, and they also wanted to be able to scale up with their systems and so forth. And so I got brought in, or this is how Fred works. He's unique. We talked twice, and on our second conversation, he realized that there was a culture fit, there was a competence fit, and he said, "So, when can you move here to this island? I've got a wife and 3 children and 2 businesses, and a healthy organization and position I was in at the time too." And he said, "Can you be here next week?" Dead serious. Can I move my family, relocate to the Indian Ocean in a week? And I laughed and said, "Fred, of course not." Some of the circumstances I said, and he said, "Well, yeah, you're right about that. How's 2 weeks?" Dead serious. And so that's when he says, "Let's launch another campus," that's the kind of attitude he does it with, and we find a way to make it happen. It's pretty exciting. So for the first, so we started with, let's launch an MBA. Let's do that remotely. Let's assemble a team that doesn't disrupt the internal teams. So I brought Greg on board. MonkeyPod's played a huge role in really 2 things. One, helping us, and this is something that Greg doesn't do and MonkeyPod doesn't provide as one of their regular services, but Greg has been one of our key marketing automation specialists and gurus, and so he's critical to that, and we've expanded even that team, and our marketing operations has expanded with other freelancers and contractors and stuff. But the stuff that makes this magic work, Greg is behind almost all of it when it comes to the automation. But more importantly is we want to empower people, and we want to empower people on our team, and so MonkeyPod has been critical in the support and the education and the preparation and the empowerment of our employees. So our internal marketers, who we're trying to transfer this knowledge on, the internal team may not be familiar with marketing automation or this tool specifically, as well as our sales team who are using Infusionsoft to run their pipelines and the reports and so forth. And so they've been consuming that, and it was our way to rapidly accelerate the competence and level people up to where we needed them to be.
So 12 months ago, what did the marketing department or marketing team at ALU look like?
Well, total, there were 3 people for the undergrad side, and a few sales reps, and admissions person, so 6 or 7 people. The MBA, when we came in, which was all we were focused on initially, was just launching this MBA and doing it not disruptive to the rest of the team. Right. There was me, and there was an intern, and then I quickly roped Greg in. So we had an intern. Now I want a caveat about ALU and how ALU works. Our intern is a Harvard graduate, and I've got another intern, on our sales team right now who's a Yale graduate, and we've got somebody who's interning that's an MIT graduate. And so I'm literally the dumbest guy in the whole organization, and it's pretty awesome to have that kind of just that kind of competence and intelligence and so forth around there. But we started with 2, and we grew quickly.
That is a testament, again, to Fred and the ability for him to paint a vision and subscribe people to it. which is very closely tied to leadership, and that's one of the most impressive things to me is Fred's ability to recruit the right people for the organization, but also for the role, and put them in positions to be autonomous and succeed. And so that's I think a critical piece of this equation is just having the right personnel. So fast forward to today, the marketing team is now how many people?
Overall, the whole thing's 32, and then we flex with contractors and freelancers, and so it gives us the ability to really flex and take a lot of project requests and be able to contract to our normal size. The marketing team itself, I don't want to make it sound like we're some giant organization. That's our trinity, which is sales, marketing, and admissions, and ultimately it's the front end of the entire prospect and applicant experience. And I lead all of that because all of that is their journey. So it's important to have a consistent strategy and systems in place for that. The marketing team itself, we're pretty lean actually. So there's 5 full-time on-the-ground employees on the marketing team there, and then again we've got that ability to flex with contractors, and we've got a whole ghost team around the world that do some other things that are on long-term contracts.
And we now use 2 Infusionsoft applications. The first one was for the MBA program, and I'm not sure when the transition took place. But I think the undergraduate team saw some of the things we were doing for the MBA program, and they said, "Hey, we'd like some of that." And so they bought a second Infusionsoft license and set up a lot of similar systems to replicate what we were doing. Kind of, I don't want to say it was a pilot because it was very much live and it was impacting the inaugural MBA class. But it was a contained environment so that we knew, all right, if this works, we can take some of those things and replicate it for the undergrad, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And then just to wrap that timeline you're asking about, we launched the MBA in September of 2016, and we got started. We didn't start marketing until mid-April. And in May, we really ramped things up and tried to drive a lot of volume. And then we had to fill that class by September. And so we did. We exceeded our goal, and it's been a really amazing product. And we're about to more than double the next class that's coming in for the MBA. At that time, we decided to centralize all of the marketing team, which is that 32 members of that trinity I was just referring to, around October. And so ever since then, we've been looking and taking the strategies and things that we're going to share with you over the entire organization, which is our undergraduate, which now has 2 campuses, our School of Business, which has our MBA as well as executive education, what we call our schools of excellence, which are very specific postgraduate schools. We have a School of Conservation, a School of Insurance, and a School of Accountancy, and then also our internal. We have a recruiting machine to try to feed this really rapidly growing organization. So there's a lot of marketing needs and different brands under the umbrella of ALU, and then different product lines in each of those. And we had to find a way to say, hey, this strategy, this formula, this recipe, this works, and it only works every time. But how do we put it into and over each of these with a limited size team and so forth? And that's some of the stuff we'll share with you.
So as we transition here into the how, which will be the playbook piece, I'd love to share. And I know this is not. This is going to be a little unnatural for you, but I want you to brag about what ALU has done because I'm blown away by it. So I'm going to make up some numbers and then I'll let you correct me. So in the past year, ALU has generated 35,000 leads. It has converted 7,500 of those leads to applicants, and then has admitted 1,200 of those applicants as students to their various programs. And I stole that from one of the videos I saw for the ICON contest next week. But how did I do? Are those numbers ballpark right?
Yeah, pretty close, pretty close. And when you look at the 2 different apps, the 2 different sides of the 2 main sides of the business, graduate and undergraduate, they're really separate. And so those numbers, they multiply. We've got over 40,000 leads, so just on the postgraduate side. We've got, I think we're at about 20,000 leads on the undergraduate side, so we're looking at 50, 55, 60,000 leads now. But yeah, we're almost at 8,000 applications today. We have a goal of 10,000 by the end of May. We're on track to hit it and exceed that. And we have a pretty rigorous application and acceptance rate. But we have close to 1,000 admitted students for right now. And this is the interesting thing. Right now we have 350 seats for those 1,000 admits, and we have a whole nother round to go. So we're looking at how do we expand our ability to take more students, because these are these are some amazing students that we just don't have the capacity to. We can't build our infrastructure fast enough and build campuses fast enough for who we're finding. So that's good problems to have.
Yeah, cool. So let's transition into the playbook, and I know you wanted to share your screen so that you can go over the slide deck. Just for context for anyone, I'm going to turn off my webcam here so that we don't have too much bandwidth lag. But just for context for anyone, this is the actual marketing playbook that we use for our marketing team, the one that Justin just finished describing. So what he's going to share with you, we've used internally, and we've shared with the different staff that we need to be on the same page. Take it away, J-Mac. Cool.
Let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, we can see it. Go ahead and launch the deck, and then I will manage the questions.
Cool. So like Greg said, this is literally the deck that we had a marketing meeting just a couple weeks ago at the beginning of Q2. We've onboarded some new marketers, a new social media marketer and a new video marketing manager who we're really pumped about. And so we just wanted to, they just got onboarded from the organization, and we wanted to organize and let them know, hey, what's the name of the game we're playing, right? How do you win? How do you, how do we win? How do we score? And then how do you and your individual role win? And so literally nothing, prepared specific for today's webinar. This is just sharing what we really do. So I'm going to whip through these, and if you've got something that really catches your attention, you want to talk more about, then please raise a flag for that. But this is how we think about marketing. This concept of strategy is nothing more than a plan guiding your allocation of resources, the where, when, and how you invest your time, energy, and money. And so us getting clear on strategically what and how are we trying to do things, and then aligning our resources to go actually accomplish that. Because at the end of the day, this is about outcomes, and so it's organizing that work so people can be autonomous, do what they're great at, and that all the effort and energy that people are spending is driving towards those designed and intended outcome that we design at the leadership level. So ALU's marketing and sales strategy is to create simple prospect, applicant, and student journeys, and that those journeys lead, which is a key word, they lead them from one decision to the next decision that we and hopefully they want to take. This is about setting a vision for our prospects to an end result that they want. And so it's us being able to articulate that. And we do that. We create those simple journeys and those effective journeys through personal and automated experiences that scale both consistently. We're creating the best experience for every prospect we have because we're automating it, and also effectively based on the tactics we're using and the content and positioning and so forth that's in our marketing messaging.
Hey, Justin, let me interrupt just briefly. So I mentioned at the very beginning that Justin's background is in customer experience, or at least in part in customer experience. And for those of you who may not be familiar, this is, in a nutshell, customer experience. It's designing the course that you want your prospects and customers to experience, and how you want them to feel at each of those junctures, and how you want them to feel as they think about your brand, and just being really deliberate and intentional about that whole start to finish journey as you're creating it. And then how we do it is gonna be explained in a few moments. But this is that customer experience nutshell. And even if you don't have students or applications, right, you can build what you'd like your own customers, your own prospects to experience, and it starts with defining it.
Perfect. The next thing that we believe is that we can understand our audience so that we can articulate how our offerings benefit them, which increases conversions. So everything we do is about really from a both formal and informal, qualitative and quantitative market research to understand what resonates with our market. And for us, we're continually growing in our sophistication to understand our different markets. As I said earlier, Africa is very, very different, and what Nigerian undergrads want versus what Nigerian professionals want compared to Kenyan or Rwandan people. There's differences, and so we're finding what's the main thing that resonates with them all. But then we're getting into segmenting our messaging and knowing what visuals appeal to them, what language appeals to them, what are ultimately the benefits they're looking for, and us also understanding for our undergrads who are our market segments? The students, yes. Their parents, definitely so. And then obviously our influencers like the headmasters and mistresses and counselors and so forth. So it's understanding all of those different audiences and how we speak specifically to them about the benefits that they care about. And then we believe that consistent, relevant follow-up builds trust, authority, and likability with our brand to nurture prospects to make decisions when they are ready. You can imagine the quote-unquote sales cycle of a college admission or an MBA, and we're talking high price tags. The average family salary across the continent of Africa is $6,000 US. That's for a year. So you can imagine when you've got a university that is highly affordable, but still very expensive, and in almost all cases more than their entire annual salary. A, we got to be innovative with how we make it accessible, but B, it's a very, very big decision. And so we have to understand, how do we nurture them to be there and make it easy for them to convert when they're ready to convert, and make those decisions to start and finish applications and enroll and so forth. And we believe that doing all of the above well creates a cycle where our biggest source of new leads is from the brand equity we earn through word of mouth. We can't afford to spend enough on Facebook advertising to make 3 million leaders. We can't afford it. We can't scale to that if we don't have the power of our brand equity and the power of word of mouth, and just the energy and the flywheel that gets created from us basically making a brand promise and then fulfilling that brand promise. And that starts with every experience they have with their first stage of awareness with us, through their applications and all of our marketing messaging, and then of course on through their student journey and beyond. And so I wanted to talk about visually what our strategy is, and how we articulate that to our internal team, because this is the game we're playing. And so I'll talk through a little bit of this in a second and let you digest visually what's happening there. But it's basically how we say strategically, here's what we're trying to do, and then tactically, here's the types of plays that fall into those different phases of this strategy. But before I go on any further, I'll pause too. And Greg, is there any specific things you'd like to hit on? Anybody who's been asking about in the first section I covered?
No, we're rocking and rolling. I think people are ready for this piece.
Cool. So visually, this is it. And at its simplest, this is lifecycle marketing, by Infusionsoft. And so, how we articulate what that looks like and what the main phases of that are. And there's a whole framework around how we prioritize where we invest our tactics in this. But ultimately, this is the game that we play. And if you look down at the below the main bow tie funnel, you see a row that says tactics. And again, remember, this is an internal document we use to help explain to people this concept of marketing, this concept of customer experience, and this concept of creating a cycle and word of mouth and so forth. And so creating something that's really capturing a complex concept and hopefully making it simple, because they have needs where they know that, hey, I've got to drive a bunch of leads for something. I'm going to have an event in Lagos, and I need to fill it with 100 people. How do I do that? And so they don't, internally, our internal customers, and I'll pause there and actually hit on that. We treat our internal marketing team as an internal marketing agency, and we serve internal clients who are those other brands, I was referring to. Some of them we have more bandwidth for, and others we have more ad hoc and pay more ad hoc attention to. But it's us having a systematic way to be able to deliver on the project requirements and create tactics quickly, effectively, and efficiently that ultimately drive the numbers that we need and expect. And so you just kind of see in this tactics area here some examples, right? These things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but it's just explaining to people internally who aren't marketers, who aren't digital marketers either, what are some of the plays that we know work. And so, and I'll give you just really simply, a string of plays that works really well for us. One, we do live events really, really well. And so you see right here just left of the $ of the conversion experience. And for us, we know that when people experience the ALU learning model or events that we have, we know that, of course, that they've never experienced anything like it, because what we're offering is truly innovative and unique. And so it increases their likelihood to convert into whatever it is, whatever product line is relevant to them, an MBA, undergrad, whatever. And so we know we do that very, very well. And we also know that we market those events really well. We use, our number one lead source is our existing list, one that we've built, as well as partners and affiliates. We have an African Leadership Network, and we've built and maintained those relationships and nurtured those relationships really well. And then we've gotten pretty good at the paid social traffic game. We're still working and segmenting there, but we've gotten pretty good with that. And then, of course, we know we do these live events really well. And so that's a playbook that or a series of plays that really does well for us. But the magic for us is, we spend a lot of money. Well, relatively, we don't spend a lot of money. We're under budget, and Fred's like, hey, spend more money, which is also a great thing to hear as a marketer. And so we're really being pretty effective with what we're doing. But the secret sauce is right there with engagement, and how we set up our drip campaigns to nurture people, so that we know we've built a fun park, we've built an amusement park. Our job is simply to get people into the doors or through the gates, and then let the automation run. And we know that, I'll give you a quick example. Right now we've got 12,000 new opportunities for our undergrads. We have 5 on-the-ground reps that are supposed to be calling those 12,000 people. They are not calling those 12,000 people. We're building on scaling and so forth. But what they do know is all 12,000 of those people are in a drip getting emails from them, their sales rep, nurturing that relationship. And we've got things in place that lead score them and allow them to raise their hand and bubble themselves up, so that our reps are only spending time with people who are the warmest, hottest leads and closest to converting. So they know that there's this drip that's always happening, and we've seen some incredible results from how that drip has nurtured people along, so that they convert when they're ready.
Hey, Justin.
Yep.
So I was just thinking, as I look at this slide, that it felt really familiar, and not because I've worked with you and with ALU, but we've got some people on this call, Brett and Chris and Christine and Elliot, and probably some others who are really familiar with Infusionsoft or have been around the Infusionsoft ecosystem for a while. And if you're thinking this looks familiar, it is. I mean, this is lifecycle marketing in a nutshell. And some of the elements you see here you may recognize from the small business success method, right? So we're not claiming to have concocted this from scratch. We're taking some very proven concepts and personalizing it or standardizing it for the brand and the experience that we want to create specifically under our umbrella.
Yeah. That doesn't even occur to me. Here's the thing that I've realized more and more the longer I've been in this game in marketing, and it's this concept that is so familiar to people who are in the Infusionsoft ecosystem is not familiar to other people. It's groundbreaking, and as simple as it seems, it's actually not real simple to get their heads around it sometime. And so we needed a simple way to visualize that, and also find a way. Just again, my internal audience of my team, finding ways that and words that make sense to them. And so that's
I don't want to trivialize it at all. I mean, I think everybody agrees that the concepts of lifecycle marketing are valid. But there's still very few people who go through and execute on it and then adhere to it, right? And so that's all I'm saying, is that if this looks familiar to you, yeah, this is lifecycle marketing as it pertains to ALU.
100%. When I got to ALU, I felt like I had an unfair advantage, because all of our success comes from everything Infusionsoft is built for, everything that Infusionsoft is teaching, both lifecycle marketing and the small business success method, and it has proven to be effective only every time. So yeah, it's been great, and what's been a surprise to me is just how rich this single concept is for everybody, and trying to get their brains around it. And so this allows our team, for example, the marketing team just had a retreat in Mauritius where I wasn't, and our director was there running that, and they were brainstorming some new stuff coming up for getting ready for Q3. And they know that, hey, you can do whatever you want, but understand these are our 4 priorities, which I won't get into now, and this is our strategy. So if they fit into our strategy and they fit into our prioritization matrix, which is how we choose to go after certain tactics, which order we go after them, and ultimately if they fit and roll up to our 4 major priorities, then then you can run with it. So those are the guide rails that let our our sled dogs run as fast as they want to run, because we've got harnesses in place to make sure that what they're doing and spending their time on and being all their creativity and all their energy is aligned to our strategy, again, which is what it's simply a plan for the allocation of your resources, both their time, our money, our resources, and so forth. And this is what creates that, so that I can be literally across the world, and our team is humming and feeling great because they know that they're contributing things that are meaningful, and also have total space and freedom to do things that taps into their creativity.
Awesome. Let's keep rolling. Well said.
Cool. Just a quick look at the technology. This is all internal. I just wanted to familiarize some of our new members that, hey, these are and some of our existing members. These are the tools we use specifically for marketing. And so I thought this would be helpful to share with all of you, because we all use lots and lots of tools. And the really cool thing about ALU is it is such a world-class, legit thing that we are, and that I'm a part of here. CNN calls ALU the Harvard of Africa, and what was it? Fast Company named us one of the top most, I think, third most innovative company in the world. There's some really cool stuff going with that. At the same time, we're a startup, and so we're using some of the same small business tools that that a lot of people on this call are used to using also. And so this is our world right here, and you can even see with marketing automation, we're growing, and we'll be working on a transition into an enterprise system in the future. And so we're planning that and working on those things as well. And we'll have Infusionsoft, even after we make a transition into a larger system, and one that also allows us to be more B2B as well. We'll continue using Infusionsoft for quite a while with some of our existing brands I mentioned under that umbrella.
Perfect. Yeah, this is a little bit overwhelming to just look at how many different things there are there, but in a way, it gives me a sense of relief just knowing that we've visualized it and I can see where they all plug in. But go ahead.
Yeah, and it gives a sense for how complicated things can be. So when somebody asks something or thinks, hey, I just want to run some Facebook ads and generate some leads. Well, there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of different tools, and which requires a lot of different skills from people to be able to set up those tools and build the content that goes into the assets that we're using for our marketing and so forth. So it can be highly complex. And again, how you organize that and make sense of that is critical, so that people can be autonomous, and ultimately we can create things that are actually effective and move the needle. And speaking of the needle, here's just a screenshot of our scoreboard. We have quite a few different scoreboards. This is a Graphly dashboard from I don't know, a couple weeks ago at the beginning of this month. And this is cool. And if you don't have clear insight into your business, then it's really hard to make decisions. It's hard to lead your business. And we've worked really hard to make sure data integrity is something that's really challenging for us. We've got a lot of systems talking to each other. So we use custom-built APIs. We use out-of-the-box integrations between our different systems, and we use Zapier. We just abuse Zapier to get things to talk to each other. But our data is at 99.9% accuracy, and this is cool. This is like every morning I can see what happened in Africa the day before, and what's happening live, and refresh these things and see where we're going. We've got this on a big monitor in the office there, and it's taking that blindness. Here's the deal: when you tell a group of sales reps or recruiting reps who are going around Africa trying to drum up interest into this school that's this new thing. And you tell them, hey, we're launching a new campus, and we're going to generate 10,000 applications for that new campus, and that's way more than they've done in their previous one. They don't know how they're going to do it. When you create a plan that articulates, here's how we're going to go do that, and then you have a scoreboard that shows that we're actually doing that, we're actually trending towards that. It gives them the motivation to continue to do that and believe that it's possible. And so getting clarity into that is something key, and it's a big shift we've made at ALU. From a scrappy startup as we're maturing, is to get very, very data driven. We still use our gut on some things, of course, and we make quick decisions, and we test and we iterate, and that's not double speak. I think a lot of people say those words. We actually do that, but we see, because we've got the measurement mechanisms in place, we see what the truth is, and things we think work that don't work, we find out why, and things we may not think will work, we test anyway, and sometimes are often very surprised. So here's a quick look at that scoreboard. We've got a few others for them, and this is the dashboard of the race car, and pretty exciting stuff. And I refresh this thing anytime I get on there. I'm refreshing it and watching the numbers climb, and it's pretty exciting. A little hit of dopamine.
The competitor in me just thrives on this stuff.
Yeah, and anybody else that loves charts and stuff like that, these numbers, hopefully they're pretty self-explanatory. I'd like to think they are. But if you're looking, I'd be curious to see if there's any sort of outlying piece of data that is compelling to you or exciting to you, and maybe I'll come back to that later if somebody wants to chat in something that caught your attention here, because there is something really pretty cool on one of these widgets here that maybe we'll chat about a little later.
Right on.
This is I don't want to talk a lot about this. This is that internal marketing agency that I was mentioning you earlier, and how we ultimately serve all of those different brands. We've got 4 main ones and some other smaller ones, and that's what those satellites are on the outside. And there's our internal marketing team with our ability to have flex and contraction with our freelancers, and us putting in place a marketing manager role, which we've done in the last month and a half, which has been critical for our ability to create that autonomy. I was working daily with the School of Business, even over the last many months, and since we put a marketing manager in place, I get updates from that. I've got insights into the dashboards, and things are running. And the same thing with the Schools of Excellence in recruiting, and so it's been really key. And so that marketing manager role, we've got to have standards, we've got to have standard operating procedures, we've got to have systems and frameworks in place, so that we're all playing the same the same key, and producing things that are all effective, that fall in line with our strategy, as well as are in line with our brand. And so this is a visual about how we do that. The toolkit they use, there's 5 main tools that we use to do that. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are all really critical. I'll give you an insight just into the first one in a second here. But this is the playbook that our marketing managers use, and that our teams are familiar with when they have a marketing request. The first one's the blueprint. This is one of the, I don't know, to me this is something I really am excited about, because it standardizes absolutely everything that needs to happen for a marketing tactic to launch and be effective. One of the positioning exercise is something that we walk people through, and it's a tool we've built to have them be able to articulate. This is what I was referring to earlier in one of those slides. What is the content? What does it say? And how do you get people, how do you speak to your prospects in a way that excites them, because you're talking about either one of their pain points or one of their aspirations, in a way that they can see how what you do for them, what you do for them does for them, right? What's the end result you're going to get for me? People don't want just an MBA; they want an MBA so that they can get something else. And so we try to find what those things are, and then articulate that. And this positioning exercise extracts that from these quote-unquote product managers in our organization. We're trying to market something that I or my team, we don't know what the School of Excellence, the School of Insurance short course, coming up in May. We don't have all the details for that. So we've got tools that extract that into this into this playbook, so we can help them launch things that work. Understanding that number 3 is the persona profile, helping them articulate who we're talking to. 4, our marketing automation plan, which is a standard operating procedure for when we turn over things to our marketing automation team, and ops team, which is Greg and some other people, so that they know everything that they need. There's also, we've got kind of a 12-hour delay when we talk to Africa, right? It's literally an 11-hour difference back to the headquarters, and so if they need something in the middle of the day, it's the middle of the night here, and oftentimes I'm up at those hours, but we've got to be able to get answers without having to ping somebody who's asleep in Africa to find out, hey, what's the subject line of this? So we gather all that information early. And then the 5th one is we create assets. We create templates for our assets, things like Facebook posts. We've got a lot of templates for that, so people can fill in their own content and use something that's already on brand. Same thing with landing pages, email templates, and so forth, so that people have really autonomy to build some of their own stuff and allow us to accelerate it, and not have this giant, cumbersome, slow marketing machine that ultimately will always be a bottleneck. So we've enabled build this autonomy through our organization, and we've got those guide rails or those harnesses so that people can run fast because they need to run fast, but that they're doing so aligned and directionally headed where we've all agreed we're going. Last thing I'll show you is just a look at that marketing blueprint. Here's what we use to do that. If you geek out over systems and organization, then I think you'd love this. This is something that we developed when I was part of a team over the last 2 years ago, over the last year and a half or whatever, at Infusionsoft, called the Small Business Success Method. And this is one component of that, which is how do you organize your tactic. And if you look down the left, if you're seeing this for the first time, I think it'll explain a lot of stuff you already intuitively know. If you look down the left, there's kind of an acronym that spells stacks, and then there's a staxo if you look at the owners at the bottom. But ultimately, you're trying to accomplish some sort of strategic objective. And then, in order to accomplish that strategic objective, you're identifying what tactic will do that. And then once you're clear on the tactic, then you've got to just decide what are the assets we need to be able to build this tactic out. And usually assets are things that are customer facing, and they're assets. They're things that exist and have value and usually can be repurposed. So as you can see there, they're things like emails, landing pages, videos, right, so on and so forth. And then once you know what your assets are, which build out that journey we were talking about, then you have to know, well, what's the content that goes in and on those assets? What are the images? What's the copy? What are the graphics? What are the fields if you've got forms on there? So on and so forth. Once you know the content and you know the asset, then and only then can you choose which tools are we going to use to build or host these assets. You've obviously there's no shortage of tools that you can use, and there is not one tool to rule them all. And so it's understanding which tools do we already have subscriptions to, which ones do we need, what journey are we really trying to build for people, and which tools actually facilitate that. Once you know the tools, then and only then can you identify which skills are needed, to the technical skills to use the tools and the creative skills to actually create the content. And then when you're outsourcing those things, there's a third important skill. It's called leadership and management. How do you manage the skill of managing those other people who have the skills to use your tools and build your content? And then finally getting clear on, okay, who are they? Who are they internally? Who are they externally? And actually calling them out by name. And if you're a solopreneur, and I've been that, then you are all of that, or you will find freelancers. But the point is all of this stuff has to get done, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you like it or not. And this process of creating this blueprint articulates all of that. It identifies all of that. And when someone has a big, fancy, sexy idea for this, complicated campaign, when you start laying all of this out, the same thing happens every time. They start paring down the scope of that and realizing, no, I don't need all that. I need it to be simple and sound, because they know that these are all the things that have to get done. So this has been a very, very effective tool that we use to make sure that all of our stuff launches fast, on time, and ultimately is effective. When we run a webinar, we want it full. When we do a live event, we want the fire department to show up and tell us you can't let people in. And so this is how we do that.
So,
Greg, yeah.
Yeah. So, if you are a solopreneur, and I am, and you have been, or even if you have a small team and you haven't done something like this, going through the marketing blueprint exercise, identifying all of those assets, those are the green ones across the top, and then working down each column to get the content, tools, skills, and owners figured out, this is how you scale. Right? It is not scalable to be a solopreneur forever, right? You can only grow so big as your bandwidth allows you to, and even if you have a small team, you just have a slightly higher ceiling. And so identifying a system like this early on is, it may be frustrating when you see your name on every single one of those things, but what it does is it sets you up to outsource some of those things, or to pass off some of those responsibilities when the time is right. But if you don't know all of the moving pieces that go into making something happen, then it feels like, well, I have to do it all. And in reality, there may be some components that are dependent on you, but odds are there are some of those things that you could begin to delegate or outsource.
Yeah. And to that, we've got this growing team, because naturally we have to grow to keep up with this vision we have. But as Greg mentioned at the beginning, there was me, Greg, for a very limited number of hours that I will say I abused. And then John, our Harvard intern, who's just a total stud at the beginning of this. So you can imagine how often my name was on all those things. And so if you look at the School of Business website today, I built that, and that's not my native genius. things, and I wrote copy, and I cut videos, and I did a lot of those things, and quickly put some things in place until I could expand and get the people. Because the other thing is, you can't just go hire anybody that isn't going to fit your company or have the competence for what you need. And so it takes time to source that as well. So even in this large growing org, there was a lot where I felt like a solopreneur early on. That's how the MBA initially launched. So that's all too fresh for me.
I want to transition into some of the lessons that I've learned and you have over the last year. Was there another slide after this, or was that where you wanted to wrap up?
That's, I think, a great place to wrap up. If you've got more interest or appetite for some of the other tools we use and so forth, find me at ICON and buy me a cider, and we'll dig into it.
Justin says cider because he's not a beer guy. Just to clear that up, that's a very specific request if you don't know that about him. Cool. So this has been a really, it's been an awesome experience. I think Justin would echo that. I've learned a ton, and I have been utterly humbled by the things that I did not know. So there are a bunch of lessons, but I condensed them down to a few that I wanted to impart or share with you guys because I think that these are really valuable and hopefully will be for you. So the first is that there will always be exceptions, right? Justin said early on, this isn't what MonkeyPod does, and it really isn't. I've been a consultant for ALU. I've been an implementer in a lot of capacities for ALU. I've trained a lot of their staff, and so some of those things have aligned with what my business does, but some of them are totally outside of the scope of what I'm trying to build with MonkeyPod. But the reality is, this was such a unique project, I couldn't say no to it. It was such a cool story and compelling vision that I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to get involved in some capacity, and I'm very, very fortunate that Justin has been able to include me in so much of what he's been setting on to do, and Fred has included Justin, obviously. So you should be clear on what your business stands for, I guess, is my lesson, but there will always be exceptions to that, and when the right opportunity shows up, have that conversation and be receptive to those types of things. Lesson number 2 is to implement redundancies. We learned this lesson a couple different times over the last 12 months when we had systems fail for us, and that in some cases was Infusionsoft with a bug or a glitch, but in some cases it was Zapier or Webinar Jam or the other tools that we were dependent on. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because you need these tools in order to grow your business and in order to scale. And you don't plan to make mistakes, but it's important to have redundancies because some things will be out of your control. One thing I recognized is that I have a bit of an ego about me. I think I'm really good at what I do, and I take a lot of pride in building campaigns that aren't going to have issues. And sometimes there are things that are just out of your control. And so having some redundancies in place would have saved us some pretty significant grief. And so that was a lesson that I learned the hard way, is no matter how good I think I am, there are some things we can do, like building in an extra delay timer just in case when we press publish something happens that we don't think should happen. Or building in extra notifications so that if our zaps are all turned off and the one person who's getting notifications isn't at their desk, those get forwarded to several other people so that we know, hey, we hit our limit or this connection broke. So I would really encourage you guys to look at where you need redundancies, and even if you don't think you need them, be strategic about implementing them ahead of time. The third lesson here is plan for the reports that you want, right? And this was, Infusionsoft has a lot of data, in some cases more than you will ever need, but finding the meaningful way to look at that data is not always as straightforward as you'd like. And so what we've taken to doing is, and we've learned this lesson the hard way, is building our reports as we structure our automation. So if we know we're going to want to report on how many people started their application after the first section of the drip, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, and there are 11 different sections of our drip sequence, and we want to know who converted from which one, well, there's a really easy way to do that if you plan ahead and include the right number of tags or notes in the right places. And sometimes we got that right from the onset, and sometimes we had to go back and retroactively implement it. So those are my 3 takeaways as far as lessons that I've learned over the past 12 months, or lessons I've been reminded of, and I think that hopefully those can be meaningful for your business. Justin, Not to put you on the spot here, I know you shared a lot of the things that you've learned over the slide deck that you shared. But is there anything that you want to celebrate that was done really well, or anything that you wish we could have done differently that you want to touch on?
There's all kinds of stuff I'd love to hit on, but for the sake of time, I want to reiterate firmly what you said about the redundancies and so forth. We've got Greg and I have a familiar analogy I use about partially cooked chicken, right? And there's certain things in the spirit of being lean entrepreneur. There's things that you ship, an MVP, a minimum viable product. There's certain things that you ship early, but there's certain things that it would be like undercooking chicken. You can ship undercooked chicken to the table and it can look great on the outside, but you're going to give someone food poisoning if it's not all the way cooked. Whereas steak, you can obviously have rare and medium rare and well and so forth, and it's still gonna be fine. So to that analogy, it's understanding which things in your business, which things in your marketing and your automation are steak, right? That you can ship rare and maybe a little red and a little more rare to someone's taste, but it's still not going to poison them. And which things are chicken? And putting redundancies in place, putting fail safes in place to say, hey, what's the worst thing could happen right now before I send this broadcast to a whole bunch of people? What's the worst thing that could happen from a technical standpoint, or I've got something broken in my merge field or whatever it is, and solving for that, right? And making sure that whether it's technology or whether it's human error, that you put something in place to protect yourself. And so it's a little bit of doing your future self a favor when you do that. And we've gotten very good at that, and we've learned the hard way about those things.
Hang on right there, Justin. So there's a question from Gina who said, should love to hear more specifics about creating redundancies. And so I'll share an example, right? We launched the campaign that was setting out a complex set of communication to a number of different segmented groups. And so we had this funnel that was designed simply to segment people into these different buckets and then distribute one variation of a message to them based on a number of factors that we knew about them. And we did a bunch of testing, and all of the decision diamonds and everything worked exactly how we expected. But, of course, when we went live and we put, I forget how many contacts it was into that particular campaign, everybody, what's that?
498.
Yeah. It haunts us. Everybody got the wrong communication. They also got the right communication, but everybody got several messages, at least one of which was wrong. And that was really frustrating because we did all the testing. We thought we had been thorough enough, but it could have been solved if we had just implemented a 15-minute or a 30-minute delay in front of each of those pieces of communication, because we would have been able to see as we add contacts, where are they all going? And if we know there's 498 people, but the numbers don't add up, then they have been broken into too many different sequences, and we could have built in that fail-safe window, which would have given us the ability to catch that and turn it off or fix it. So little things like that, Gina, I think that can be tough to predict. But as Justin said, if you outline the worst case scenario and then you work around solving that, or if that happens, how do we mitigate that risk? Things will always go wrong. It's a matter of minimizing the impact that happens when they do. Hey, Justin, I interrupted you.
No, I think that was great, and I think a great example. I wanted to be sensitive to the time and see if you want to invite people to close up. I'm happy to stay and continue to field questions as well as address a couple of these other points you've brought up. But at the football coach in me is a start on time, in on time guy.
That is totally fair. Appreciate you holding me accountable here. So we are at the top of the hour. I'd love to chat more about these lessons. I'd love to discuss a little bit about our journey and experience as an ICON finalist. And a couple good questions in here that I'd like to address as well. But at first, if you have places to be, if you've got appointments that you need to run off to, I totally respect that. So thank you for being here today. We are recording, and in the event that barring any event or technical disruption in that recording, I will distribute this in the next 24 hours for you guys. So you should be able to review those slides and go over any elements of this that you may have missed. Or I know there were a couple comments early on about the audio being disrupted. So we will get that out to you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And one quick request: if you are going to be at ICON, we would love some extra loud applause when they talk about ALU. If you're networking with other entrepreneurs and they're wondering who should I vote for the ICON contest, we would appreciate your support for that as well. Justin, having said that, anything I'm forgetting here?
No, it sounds great. I'm happy to hang longer and hit some of those other agenda items for anybody that wants to stay. Hopefully it'll be really, really good stuff. But
cool.
Those of you that are leaving, man, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, this is awesome. So let's circle back to, there were a couple more lessons it sounded like you wanted to share, and then we can talk about the ICON journey, and then there's a couple questions I want to address as well.
Cool, perfect. Yeah, I had two other main takeaways. The first one wasn't something that was confirmed. And ultimately, it's the power of people and relationships. So you can't do anything, and you can't create anything that's worthwhile or successful without people and without investing in those relationships. And so one of the things, leading the team remotely from across the world, you've got all kinds of different barriers, both physical, technological, age, and culturally. The biggest thing is building and pouring into those relationships. And so we've built some awesome relationships with the team there. I've been to Africa many, many times to do that. What that does, it allows you to multiply yourself. And so if you haven't read the book Multipliers, I would strongly recommend you do that. Even if you're a solopreneur, you've got to start thinking about how do you multiply yourself, how do you be a multiplicative leader. If you're a parent, I think it's actually a pretty convicting parenting book too, to realize, are you multiplying and enhancing how your children behave, or are you diminishing them? So I would recommend that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that lesson we learned is the more complex that you make something, the more it's like, I don't know if you play that game Jenga, where you stack the the wood blocks up and you kind of move things. The more blocks you have, and the more you move those blocks and start changing the stability of the lower parts of that tower, the more it sways and wobbles, and the higher it gets, the more fragile it gets. And when just one thing is out of place, a lot of things can break. And so I can't reiterate enough to you as marketers and small business owners is keep things as absolutely simple as possible, and only build them or create them as complex as necessary to be effective. So that's I think one of the most important things, and that goes back to some of the redundancies that Greg was talking about and so forth, as well as your time investment. Your time and your resources is one of the most valuable things you have. The more complicated stuff you have, the longer it takes to build, the more things that break, the more time you spend fixing those things. And fixing big mess ups really consumes a lot of unanticipated time there. And the last thing. Yeah,
one quote you use around that same topic that I like is it essential or enhancing? As you're building, just ask yourself, is this essential or is it enhancing? And if it's essential, you got to do it. But if it's enhancing, you need to make a decision whether or not to prioritize it.
Yeah, totally. And then the last thing, and one of the questions, I think it was Jesse asked it earlier too, about how do you make people autonomous? I believe that any team, whether I'm coaching a Pee-wee football team or whether leading a marketing and sales team, they need to be autonomous, and you need to empower them. And so there's some layers and levels to that. Ultimately, you want to find out, are they a character and a core value fit? Secondly, do they have the commitment level to your mission and to your organization that you need? And then thirdly, are they competent? And I think competence is broken down in a few things: technical competence, content acumen, and then I think the other one's probably communication, right? They can be really good at what they do and not be very good at communicating. And when you have a team that fills all those things in those stacks, you get, I think, the top layer of all that, which is you get chemistry, and you get things really, really working well, and the result is greater than the sum of its parts. For us, that autonomy was, how do we level up an existing marketing team? How do we level them up to the competence that we need? We're playing a new game for many of them, this concept of some of the digital marketing techniques we were using and so forth. And so we had to level up not only technical skills, but also content acumen. And so I didn't have time to train people, nor am I necessarily the best person to train them. And so for our technology side, we found out what tools do people need, and how do we get them the training they need, so I don't have to spend time at 1 in the morning teaching somebody something that I might not be the best person suited to teach them. So when it came to Infusionsoft, for example, I'm going to put a plug in for how important MonkeyPod's content and training content is, the educational materials. They went through, I don't know, we got I don't know, the whole suite, I think. Our sales reps on the things they needed to use, our internal marketers who were teaching how to build marketing automation and then do it specifically inside of Infusionsoft, Campaign Builder, so on and so forth. And then, you know, Greg, basically, I don't know if you're familiar with Greg's and MonkeyPod's OG membership, the online membership. We have almost our own personal version of that, you know, where Greg can answer those types of, there it is. Oh, that's awesome. Where Greg answers questions. And so people will ping Greg sometimes from our organization and say, hey, you know, this number's not showing right, or how do I change this?
Yeah,
and,
let me pivot a little bit on that. Thank you for the plug. It's not about Greg Jenkins. It's about having a resource, an expert, right? And if that's you, then you need to invest in the education to make yourself that person, right? But if it's not going to be you, which is okay, then you need to find who is it. And it could be a certified partner. It could be somebody in the Infusionsoft ecosystem, but somebody that you can rely on and reach out to when you have those questions, who's familiar. Because support, as great as they are most of the time, they're not going to be intimately familiar with your business. And knowing all of the different systems and structures that you have set up at an intimate level is going to be really critical when it comes to troubleshooting something important. So if MonkeyPod's a good fit for you, that's, you know, I'm happy about that. But it doesn't have to be me. It's about knowing who that person is when you need those resources.
Yeah. Someone asked a question earlier too, like, what if you're stuck in that, you know, solopreneur small team transition? What's the best way to break through and let go of that solopreneur? And I think let go is the key word. I mean, I think that's what I'm alluding to, and it piggybacks off of the question also about autonomy. You have to set a vision for what do we want to have happen. You know, what's the end goal? What's the plan to get there? What needs to be true, and who do I need on my team to do that? And if it's me all over the place, you got to ask, can I, you know, where do I hit a ceiling because of that? And where do you need to invite people in, whether you're paying them, whether you're partnering with them, or whatever it may be, to get that help. I know Infusionsoft really well. But I find every time I'm in Infusionsoft doing something technical, I realize I'm not doing the things I need to be doing as a marketing leader. You know, designing a billboard campaign we have coming out, or working on positioning, or organizing our org chart, or hiring. And so I find myself in there, and I have to pull out and you know, kick that over. And if it costs more money, it costs more money. And we build all that into our plan, our marketing budget, and so forth. How much do we need to bring in, and how much do we need to allocate? And that is what's letting us grow. And it's breaking inertia. When you're a solopreneur, it's hard because, you know, every day you're trying to bring in the revenue you need to live. It's not even really feeding the business yet. But you've got to eventually, when you get to a place, plan what needs to be true to make that actually viable. And you're usually, my advice is sort of let go before you're comfortable letting go. You know, I remember in my own business a long time ago, the first time I hired a professional videographer, I couldn't really afford it. And I said, but you know what, like, I want to capture some really good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and spend on this and not take home as much as I wanted to take home from this event. It was the best thing I'd ever done, and for multiple reasons. One, those assets, I got a tremendous amount of value out of them for a long, long time. Two, it leveled up everything I was doing. Everything, that video looked so much better that now everything had to keep up with it. And I've never cut, you know, a video like that myself ever again, because it just, hands down, it was a no-brainer to hire somebody who can do it better and faster than me. You know, I'd be happy to talk more about that. I love that conversation, but that's enough for me.
Let me chime in. Let me weigh in on that also, because I love that question. And it should resonate with a lot of people in the Infusionsoft community, because there are a lot of solopreneurs or small businesses. So what's the best way to break through and to let go? For me, and I'm at that crossroad right now, my personal bandwidth is exhausted. I am doing everything that I can to make MonkeyPod grow, and it's growing, which is exciting, but I know that it can only grow so big with me being the only resource driving it. So what I did was I literally went through my calendar and I made a list of all the things I do, everything that I do to make MonkeyPod work. And it took several weeks because I don't do the same thing every day. I don't do the same thing every week. So I did this for about a month, figuring out where I spend my time. And then I went through that list and I said, all right, of this list, what are the things that I'm great at and what are the things that I'm just doing because they need to be done? And I found a way to categorize those, and I basically defined 3 different roles, things that I could hire someone to do. Now, I don't have the revenue right now to bring on 3 full-time staff members. You know, it's not like I'm swimming in you know, Scrooge McDuck piles of gold, but it was important for me to call out, okay, these are things that I am doing that don't have to be done by me. And here I am, this was about 6 months ago, here I am, fast forward to today, I've hired someone in a contract capacity to deliver on one of those roles. So I'm no longer editing my own course content. That was something that I was doing as a product of necessity because I didn't have a videographer, or an editor rather. So now I contract that out to somebody who does about 10 to 12 hours a week of brush up editing to my various courses and administrative tasks and some small other things for me. And eventually I'd like to fill those other two roles, but it's empowered me to spend more time on planning for my business because I know that there are some things that I can strategically take off my plate. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Jesse. I feel the pain where you're at, and it's all too familiar. But it just a little clarity can really help with relieving some of that burden.
One thing to add to, if there's a mindset for that, you alluded to your ego earlier, Greg, which I thought was awesome and transparent. I think we all have an ego regardless. If sometimes that's the thing that's holding you back is I can do this better than anybody, and that might be true. And if you can do that thing at A+ level, but you can get somebody else to do it at a B+ level, you need to ask yourself, is B+ level, good enough? And in the meantime, that person needs to stumble and fall and grow and so forth. But if it's good enough, then you've got to learn to let go. And that's what leadership is. And I think I see everything really as leadership. And so even when you are by yourself, you've got to start thinking of your business as a business. You've got to start thinking of the functions of that business as distinct and separate functions. So that the marketing blueprint, those are different roles, different skills, and you may not be great at designing landing pages, but if you're not going to have someone else do it, you need to, which is also why you get smart and you leverage things that get you down the road even farther, like templates and so forth, and you save yourself time there. But check your ego. If you're holding on to something and saying I'm the best person to do this and no one else can do it like I can, there's two problems with that. One, you'll only be as big as you are right now because that you've put a ceiling on your growth, and two, you aren't going to allow other people to come in and allow you to focus on the things that are necessary, to grow, and you're not going to grow yourself. So it's easy to do that, but I would just encourage you, and it seems simple to say, but just let go of that. I'll give you one more thing. I love this. There's a difference between a producer and a performer. And as you move, whether you got a small org or a big org, we wear both hats. A performer is someone who is doing, right? Think of an actor, or in a movie. That's the person who's actually performing. A producer is the person that creates the environment that allows performers to excel. And as a leader in your org, whether you're self-leading yourself or whether you're leading another team, you have to perform at times, but you need to shift more to being a producer. Produce an environment with the values and the vision and all the things that we were talking about earlier that allow performers to go out and perform and create those results. And that's how you multiply. That's how you grow. There's simply no other way to do it if you're the person in the way of that growth.
Awesome. Okay, I want to be respectful of your time as well, so let's take 5 minutes and discuss the ICON contest and what our journey and experience was like. So when did you apply?
So somebody reached out to me. If you haven't picked up already, Greg and I are both from the Infusionsoft world. We're employees at Infusionsoft. I was an employee at Infusionsoft when Fred reached out. So people there, my former colleagues and friends too, they watched what was happening and saw the pretty cool stuff that ALU was doing. And it was probably it was right after we launched the MBA. So maybe October, I guess.
Yeah.
So this is pretty cool stuff. You guys should apply. And I thought, well, I thought about it. I didn't know if it was a great fit for us either. And so it was, I think December was when it was like December 10th or something. I had to get it in, and I was flying to India and submitted it.
And that was when you asked me to look over the application and flesh out some of the story and details.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, 11th hour in early December of 2016.
Yeah. So if anyone is curious about the contest, here's what it is in a nutshell, right? It used to be called the Ultimate Marketer, right? Infusionsoft's Ultimate Marketer, and now it's called the Small Business Icon, and it is basically Infusionsoft's way of recognizing their users who have used Infusionsoft to achieve impressive or meaningful results or impact on the world or their communities or the audience that they serve. And there have been some really awesome businesses in the past who have been recognized. It's one of my favorite parts of ICON because it's just really inspiring. I love hearing entrepreneurial stories, whether that's Jermaine Griggs or Brian Young or I forget the Brooklyn Music Factory guy's name, but regardless of who it is, I just love those feel-good stories, and it obviously is a testament to what the software is capable of. So that's the nature of the contest. In addition to having a winner, they also have category winners. So you can enter as a small business icon specifically for lead generation, or I forget what the other categories are. But what I'm getting at is if you're in a business using Infusionsoft in really impressive ways and you are proud of what you've done, you should consider applying. It's as simple as that. There's no drawback to applying, but at the worst case scenario, you have the experience of that process and you learn something from it. But best case scenario, you're recognized, and whether you're a finalist or just a contributor, there's just some element to having the ability to pat yourself on the back and feel good about what you've done with this software for your business and the community you serve. So, what advice do you have for somebody who's considering applying?
Well, if you're considering applying, then apply. How many stories have I heard of people in the audience, their first icon, seeing the icon finalist competition or whatever it is, and thinking or saying like that's going to be me someday. I feel like almost everybody that's ever been on stage as a winner has that story to tell. So if that's you and you believe that that's something that you'd like to do, then do it, and or plan for it. And literally, what would need to be true between now and when you think your business would have the right story? Because at the end of the day, it's a story. Is the story compelling for that audience and for Infusionsoft? The cool thing about the application process, for me, and I had Greg help out with this too, was digging through and actually articulating and identifying what we've done. Because you're down in it and you're running, and we're moving from one tactic to the next, and we have a lot of reports and those sorts of things, but there's some things we hadn't looked at and hadn't audited, and so just being able to categorize and catalog our successes numerically and so forth, and look at things we hadn't quite looked at yet, like long-term ROI and customer value and those sorts of things in areas that we hadn't yet, that's really tremendously beneficial. If my last piece of advice for that, if you want to apply and you want to be considered, just think about your narrative. Think about the story of your business, and think about the arc, because that's really what it's about. It's about growth and transformation, like any good movie. And so think about the story. Measuring. What's that?
Start measuring so that you have those metrics and those numbers to support your story and to help paint a clearer picture.
That's it. Yeah, almost exactly right. I forget how common it is for entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, to not know a lot of their metrics in there, because you're down in it, you're trying to bring in revenue, and you're doing all these different hats. So absolutely start measuring. Build in the measurement mechanisms, the ones that matter. Don't measure everything, but measure the things that really matter, so that you can tell that story. Because at the end of the day, there has to be evidence and data to back those things up, so that you're telling an authentic story. So that would be my advice: is think about that story. And also, if you think of what I sell or what we do is not sexy, don't let that stop you. Because Infusionsoft is dedicated to small business and entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurship, and the thing that the different industries that small business owners and entrepreneurs do aren't always sexy in and of themselves. But if you're passionate about what you're doing, and what you're doing is solving and serving a real need, and you're being creative and innovative with how you market and those sorts of things, that is sexy. And so don't let something that seems boring or trivial or whatever it may be to others prevent you from applying if you're interested in that.
Well said. So just to wrap it all up here, ALU is a really impressive institution, and I feel very fortunate to have been involved. Justin, I know you feel similarly about your contributions and your role there. They're up to really impressive things, and they will continue to, I believe, change the future of Africa and therefore the world. And that has just been a really cool, it's been really cool to play a really small role in what they're up to. So I feel very fortunate about that. Sharing the story today has been a blast. I want to thank Justin for joining me. Obviously, he's an awesome guy and a brilliant leader and marketer, and a close friend of mine, very fortunately. And I look forward to buying you that setter next week.
Take you up on it.
All right, and for anyone else coming to ICON, we will see you there. Make sure you keep an eye out for Adam Levine or myself. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
How do we close this thing?
You're the tech guy.